Hi, Eleisa. How are you?
I am thankful, Leanne. How are you?
Good. Tell me, where does worship start? How? What's that first starting point of worship?
The starting point of worship. So, I've been at the Father's feet asking how to even try to explain this because it's so incredible. And he led me to John 4. The whole passage from 1 to 42, verses 1 to 42 in John 4. But where it starts is in confession. Confession of our sins, yes, to God in prayer, but also confession of our sins one to each other, one to another. And just to be clear, sin is not only the things we do or the things we say or the things we think, it's the things that we believe that are missing the mark of God's holiness. Just this week, I've had to confess my belief in thinking that who I am wasn't enough for what God's called me to do and to be. And I'm sitting here a different person than I was even a week ago, being free to speak from my heart and open my heart up and share that. So unbelief is a strong lie, and it's sin. And so I've had to confess that just this week. So confession of sin, everything that is separating us from the fullness of what God has for us, and confessing his holiness. So the truth of who he is, how different he is from me, from you, from each of us in our human nature, not in our flesh, right? In our sinful nature. That's what I want to say. Being human isn't sinful. Our sinful nature is sinful. So confession of who God is. So this week, I'm just focusing on what did God say? Who did God say he is to me, to you, to us? And he's proven himself to be trustworthy, provider, faithful. I'm holding on to him, not letting go. And so worship comes from my heart. It doesn't come first from my lips. It comes first from my heart. Confession of how I've missed him. And then confession, because when we see him, when we see Jesus, when we look at him and what he does and what he's done and what he's doing, what he's going to do, I can't help but confess with all of me, with my words, with my song, with my life, how worthy he is, how beautiful the Father is. Because until we see Jesus, we haven't seen the Father. He came to show us what the Father is like. And so if I'm encouraging us, me, you, in what worship is this week, it's our hearts being open our hearts to him. Trust him to handle our hearts with gentleness and care. And I just want to turn to the passage. I'm not going to read through the whole thing. We'll post it. I'd invite you, encourage you, ask you to read through the whole passage. We're going to come back week after week to it until we've got the message. from it. But Jesus is speaking to this daughter who is rejected, who is not valued, who is not living in the fullness of who she's meant to be, because she doesn't know who she is and she doesn't believe who she is until she encounters Jesus. And to make the story shorter, she recognizes who he is, and she talks to him about worship. And Jesus replies to her concerning where to worship and how to worship. He says to her in verse 23, "Yet a time is coming and has now come when the true worshipers will worship the Father in spirit and truth. For these are the kind of worshipers the Father seeks. God is spirit, and his worshipers must worship him in spirit and in truth." And so that just speaks to that twofold confession: in spirit because of who he is, confessing the greatness of the Lord, and in confession, in truth. We talk about speaking the truth in love, and we always make it about pointing other people's sins out. But no, speaking the truth is confessing my sin, the truth of what God has rescued me, Jesus has rescued me in and from and through, and speaking that from a heart of love. So in spirit and in truth. And that is what is going to bring people, villages, cities, and nations to seek him, to seek his face, and to turn their hearts towards him and return to him. And he meets us where we're at. He has to come find us. He doesn't want one person to miss him. And so if I'm encouraging what worship is today, it's that confession.